I saw the welts on her back, and in that instant, my world shattered. My daughter, my sweet Lily, had been hurt, and I knew nothing would ever be the same. The air in my brother Daniel's house was thick with a silence that felt wrong, heavy, like a storm brewing just out of sight. Veronica's smile, too wide and bright, didn't reach her eyes, and Lily, my usually boisterous girl, was nowhere to be heard. Just 3 months before, my life felt normal. Hectic, yes, but that comfortable kind of normal as single moms learn to appreciate. Lily and I had our routines, our inside jokes, our Friday pizza nights arguing over toppings. She was 12, whip-smart, and had inherited my late husband David's quiet determination. When David passed 4 years ago from a sudden heart attack at 38, I promised myself I'd raise our girl to be resilient, kind, and confident. What happened in Daniel's house nearly shattered all of that. My brother, Daniel, is 3 years older. Growing up in suburban Detroit, we were close in that unspoken way siblings sometimes are. He taught me to ride a bike, helped with algebra, and threatened every boy who looked at me wrong. When he married Veronica 12 years ago, I truly thought she'd be the sister I never had. For a while, she was. We shopped, shared recipes, complained about our husbands over wine while they watched football. Then, something shifted. The change was gradual, like a slow leak you only notice when the damage becomes visible. Veronica had always been competitive, but after her son, Leo, was born 2 years before Lily, that competitiveness morphed into something darker. Every milestone became a measuring stick. Every achievement required comparison. When Lily learned to read at 5, Veronica immediately enrolled Leo in an expensive phonics program. When Lily made the honor roll in 3rd grade, suddenly Leo needed a tutor 3 nights a week. I tried to brush it off. Parenting brings out strange anxieties, and I figured Veronica was just an intense mother who wanted the best. Daniel never seemed to notice, or maybe he chose not to see it, working 60-hour weeks at an accounting firm downtown, exhausted and disconnected from the domestic currents swirling around him. My own career as a physical therapist kept me busy enough that avoiding Veronica became surprisingly easy. We saw each other at holidays, occasional Sunday dinners at my parents' house, kids' birthday parties, interactions that never required diving below shallow pleasantries. Then my mother, Eleanor, decided to take a Mediterranean cruise with her book club for 3 weeks in late September. Dad had passed from cancer 6 years earlier, and Mom deserved the adventure. She worried about Daniel and me being without nearby family backup while she traveled, so she made us promise to lean on each other. Daniel called me on a Thursday evening. His voice carried that particular exhaustion I recognized from his tax season complaints. "Listen, I know this is short notice," he began, "but I have to fly to Atlanta tomorrow for this emergency audit. Clients are freaking out about some SEC inquiry. Veronica has that dental conference in Nevada until Sunday. Can Lily stay with Leo at our place while you're at work? The school bus drops them both off there anyway." Lily and Leo attended the same middle school, though Leo was in 8th grade while Lily had just started 7th. They tolerated each other the way cousins forced into proximity often do, not close, but cordial enough. I hesitated. Something in my gut prickled, a warning I dismissed as overprotective nonsense. Veronica would be gone. Leo was 14 and relatively responsible. A babysitter named Megan, who lived down the street, would supervise until I finished my afternoon appointments around 6. Sure, I finally agreed. Just text me the details. Friday passed without incident. Megan reported that both kids had done homework and played video games. Lily seemed fine when I picked her up, chattering about a science project involving plant growth and light exposure. Saturday morning, I dropped her off again, grateful for the flexibility that allowed me to cover a colleague's patients at the clinic. Sunday is when everything unraveled. I arrived at Daniel's house around 5 that afternoon to collect Lily. Veronica had returned from Nevada earlier than expected, her flight landing at noon instead of the original evening arrival. Megan had been sent home. When I knocked, Veronica answered with that painted-on smile, too wide, too bright. "Sarah, hey. Lily's just upstairs gathering her things. Want some coffee while you wait? Something felt wrong. The air itself seemed to vibrate with suppressed tension. Lily usually bounded down the stairs the moment she heard my voice, eager to share whatever adventure the weekend had brought. Instead, silence pressed down from the second floor. I'll just go help her pack up, I said, stepping past Veronica before she could object. I found my daughter sitting on the guest room bed, her backpack clutched to her chest like a shield. The blinds were drawn, casting the room in dim shadows. When she lifted her face to mine, I saw tear tracks streaking down her cheeks and something in her eyes that made my heart seize. Baby, what's wrong? I sat beside her, pulling her close. She flinched when my hand brushed her back, and the seize in my heart became a full stop. Mom, please don't be mad. Mad about what? Lily, talk to me. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Her small hands twisted the backpack straps so hard her knuckles went white. Report cards came. Aunt Veronica saw mine. Leo's, too. A cold dread began spreading through my chest. Lily had been an A student since kindergarten. She worked hard, stayed organized, and genuinely loved learning. Leo, from what I understood, struggled academically despite all the tutors Veronica threw at him. What happened after she saw the report cards? The silence that followed was broken only by Lily's shaky breathing. Then slowly she set down the backpack and turned her back to me, lifting the hem of her shirt. I've replayed that moment 1,000 times. The bedside clock glowed 5:17 p.m., a plug-in air freshener gave off a fake lavender scent, and the sound of my own heart pounded in my ears as I stared at the welts crisscrossing Lily's lower back and upper thighs. Deep purple bruises, angry and fresh. Some already darkening toward black at the centers. Raised ridges where something thin and flexible had struck hard enough to break capillaries. A distinct pattern that looked terribly familiar. She used her belt, Lily whispered. The one with the buckle. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember walking down the stairs. What I remember is Veronica's face when she saw mine. The manufactured pleasantness draining away to reveal something calculating beneath. Sarah, before you overreact, you need to understand the context. My voice came out flat, almost unrecognizable. You hit my daughter with a belt. I disciplined her. There's a difference. Your precious Lily isn't as perfect as you think. She was rubbing her grades in Leo's face, being cruel and vindictive. Someone needed to teach her humility. The words didn't fully register. My brain kept cycling back to those welts, that purple-red evidence of violence inflicted on my child's body. Show me Leo's grades. Veronica's chin lifted. That's none of your business. You made it my business when you harmed my daughter. We stood there in the kitchen, separated by a granite island and 12 years of accumulated resentment neither of us had ever named aloud. Through the window over the sink, I could see Leo in the backyard kicking a soccer ball against the fence with mechanical repetition. I'm taking Lily home, I said. And Daniel will hear about this the moment his plane lands. Daniel will understand. He knows how important academic performance is for Leo's future. He knows what happens when children don't learn their place. That phrase struck me as deeply wrong, almost rehearsed. What happens, Veronica? What exactly happens? She smiled. And in that smile, I glimpsed something that had likely always existed beneath her carefully curated exterior. They become people like you. Single mothers scraping by, working yourself to exhaustion, unable to give your child the advantages she deserves. David's life insurance won't last forever. Eventually, you'll have to face reality. The mention of my dead husband's name in her mouth made my vision blur red at the edges. But I forced myself to breathe, to stay calm, to not give her the satisfaction of an explosion she could later characterize as hysterical. We're leaving. Don't contact me. Don't come near Lily. When Daniel gets back, we'll discuss what comes next. I collected my daughter, loaded her into the car, and drove home with hands that wouldn't stop trembling on the steering wheel. Lily sat rigid in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead, not speaking. At home, I photographed every welt, every bruise with clinical precision. Medical training took over where maternal emotion threatened to overwhelm. I documented the injuries from multiple angles, included a ruler for scale, made notes about coloring and raised texture. Then, I sat Lily down and asked her to tell me everything. The full story emerged in fragments, each piece worse than the last. Veronica had arrived home Sunday around 12:30. Megan had already been dismissed with a generous tip and a casual wave. Leo and Lily were in the kitchen eating sandwiches when Veronica spotted the report card sitting on the counter where the kids had left them Friday afternoon. Leo's, 3 C's, 2 D's, 1 F in algebra. Lily's, straight A's with teacher comments praising her exceptional work ethic and creative thinking. According to Lily, Veronica stood frozen for nearly a minute, staring at those report cards. The school had sent them home with students on Friday, and both kids had left theirs on the kitchen counter along with permission slips. Veronica picked up both envelopes, opened them, and her expression transformed into something ugly. She demanded to know why Lily thought she was better than Leo. Lily, confused and frightened, said she never claimed to be better than anyone. She just did her homework and studied. That's when she grabbed the belt from the hook by the door. She said I needed to learn that showing off has consequences, that nobody likes a girl who makes boys feel stupid, Lily told me, her voice barely audible. Leo had watched the entire thing without intervening. Afterward, Veronica instructed both children that if anyone asked about the weekend, nothing unusual had happened. She said, "You wouldn't believe me anyway." Lily added, finally meeting my eyes. She said, "People always believe adults over children, and that if I told, she would make sure everyone knew I was a liar." The calculated cruelty of it staggered me. This wasn't a parent losing control in a moment of frustration. This was premeditated, deliberate violence designed to humiliate and intimidate my daughter for the crime of academic excellence. The hours after we got home felt surreal, like moving through water. I ran Lily a warm bath, adding the lavender salts she liked, and sat outside the bathroom door while she soaked. Through the wood, I could hear her humming softly, a nervous habit she'd developed after David died. She always hummed when she was trying to calm herself down. My mind kept circling back to Veronica's face in that kitchen, the absolute certainty in her expression. She genuinely believed she had done nothing wrong. Disciplining a child who needed to learn her place, she had said, as if my daughter were some kind of subordinate who had stepped out of line. I pulled up my phone and began researching Michigan child protection laws, mandatory reporting requirements, the difference between physical discipline and criminal actions. What I found both reassured and horrified me. Physical discipline that left marks lasting more than 24 hours crossed the legal line from parenting choice into illegal harm. Veronica's belt had left welts visible 4 days later. By any legal standard, she had committed harm. But I also found forums full of parents defending their right to hit children. Spare the rod. Spoil the child. Kids these days lack discipline. Comments that made my stomach turn, written by people who genuinely saw nothing wrong with striking a child hard enough to bruise. Lily emerged from the bath wrapped in her favorite robe, the one with cartoon pandas David had given her for her 8th birthday. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes that hadn't been there Friday morning. "Can I sleep in your bed tonight?" She hadn't asked that since the first year after her father died. I pulled back the covers without a word, and she climbed in beside me, curling into a ball the way she had as a toddler. Within minutes, her breathing deepened into sleep. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, planning my next moves. The following morning, I called my supervisor at the clinic and explained I needed personal time. Emily, who had covered for me through David's death and the awful months after, asked no questions. "Take whatever you need, Sarah. We've got you covered." I spent that Monday morning on the phone. First, a call to Lily's school to inform them she would be absent. Then, a call to my insurance company to verify coverage for therapy services. Then, a call to a child psychologist whose name Dr. Elena Sanchez had given me, scheduling an evaluation for later that week. Between calls, I checked on Lily. She had woken around 9 and was sitting in the living room wrapped in a blanket, watching cartoons with the volume turned low. Comfort viewing, the kind of mindless entertainment that requires nothing from the watcher. "Hungry?" I asked. She shook her head, then reconsidered. "Maybe toast." I made her toast with butter and honey, the way she'd liked it since childhood. She ate mechanically, eyes fixed on the screen, processing in her own way. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Sarah, this is Leo. Please don't tell my mom I'm texting you. I'm really scared right now. Is Lily okay?" I stared at the message for a long time. A 14-year-old boy, trapped in a house with a mother capable of what I'd witnessed, reaching out in secret to check on his cousin. Part of me wanted to reassure him. Another part recognized that any response could complicate matters if this went to court. I saved the message without replying. Evidence potentially, or just the worried plea of a child caught in circumstances beyond his control. That afternoon, I drove to the police station. The building sat on a corner downtown, a squat brick structure that always reminded me of an elementary school. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed over worn linoleum floors and plastic chairs bolted to the walls. The officer at the front desk listened to my initial explanation with a patient expression, like someone who had heard countless variations of the same story. "You want to speak with our juvenile crimes unit?" she said, handing me a clipboard. "Fill this out. Someone will be with you shortly." Shortly turned out to be nearly 2 hours. I sat in those uncomfortable chairs, filling out forms, watching other people cycle through the waiting area. A teenager in handcuffs escorted by uniformed officers. A crying woman arguing about a parking ticket. An elderly man asking about noise complaints. The ordinary business of civic dysfunction. Finally, a detective appeared. Ryan Miller was shorter than I expected, with graying temples and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He led me to a small interview room and listened without interruption as I explained everything. When I finished, he asked to see the photographs on my phone. His expression tightened as he scrolled through the images. "These were taken Sunday evening?" "Yes, about 2 hours after the incident occurred." "And your daughter is willing to give a statement?" "She's scared, but yes, she understands this is important." Detective Miller nodded slowly. "Here's what happens next. We'll need Lily to come in for a formal interview. We use trained forensic interviewers for juvenile victims. People who know how to ask questions without leading or traumatizing. Based on her statement and your evidence, we'll determine whether to pursue charges." "What kind of charges?" "Assault in the 5th degree at minimum. Given the implement used and the severity of the marks, possibly 3rd degree, which is a felony. The county attorney will make that call." "Felony?" The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. Veronica could face actual prison time. "What about my brother?" "He wasn't there when it happened, but he's been dismissive. Tried to get me to drop the whole thing." Detective Miller's expression remained neutral. Not being present means he's not criminally liable for the incident itself. If he actively interfered with the investigation or tried to intimidate witnesses, that would be different. Has he done anything like that? I thought about our phone conversation, his insistence that this was a family matter. Not yet. But he's not taking this seriously. Document any contact. Say voicemails, texts, emails. If he crosses a line, we'll address it. I left the station with Detective Miller's card in my purse and a scheduled interview for Lily later that week. The wheels of justice had begun turning, slowly but inexorably. I called Daniel that night. His phone went straight to voicemail 3 times before he finally picked up. "Sarah, hey, I'm still in meetings. Can this wait? Your wife beat my daughter with a belt. It cannot wait. The silence on his end lasted long enough that I checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. That's Sarah. Come on. Veronica would never. You must have misunderstood something. There are welts on Lily's back and thighs. I have photographs. She used a leather belt with a metal buckle. This happened while you were in Atlanta, after Veronica came home early from Nevada. More silence. When Daniel spoke again, his voice had taken on a defensive edge I recognized from childhood arguments. Look, I'm sure whatever happened it got blown out of proportion. Lily's sensitive. Veronica can be strict, but she's not harmful. Let's just all sit down when I get back tomorrow and talk this through like adults. The dismissal hit me like a physical blow. My own brother, my protector growing up, was choosing to believe his wife over documented evidence of harm to his niece. Daniel, I'm telling you this as clearly as I can. Your wife harmed my child. I have proof. If you don't take this seriously, I will go to the police. Don't be dramatic, he snapped. This is a family matter. We don't involve outsiders in family matters. That's how Mom and Dad raised us. Or did you forget? Our parents had indeed handled disputes privately within the family, but they never hit us, never raised a hand, never used belts or switches or wooden spoons. The suggestion that this situation fell under the same category as childhood squabbles about chores was insulting. I'm giving you until Wednesday to do the right thing, I said. After that, I protect my daughter with whatever means necessary. Daniel hung up without saying goodbye. Monday morning, I took Lily to our family pediatrician. Dr. Elena Sanchez had known Lily since infancy, delivered her vaccines, treated her chickenpox, and celebrated her growth milestones. When she examined the welts, her face grew very still. Sarah, you know I'm a mandatory reporter. I nodded. This was precisely why I had brought Lily here. Whatever happened next needed an official record. Dr. Sanchez documented everything, her clinical notes echoing my own photographs with additional medical terminology. Soft tissue contusions consistent with repeated impact from a thin, flexible object. Pattern injuries indicating intentional rather than accidental causation. No signs of prior mistreatment, suggesting this was an isolated incident. The police will likely want to interview Lily, Dr. Sanchez warned. Child Protective Services, too. Are you prepared for that? I looked at my daughter perched on the examination table in her paper gown, looking smaller than her 12 years. Her eyes met mine, and I saw fear there, but also something else. Trust. We're prepared. The following days blurred into a nightmare of interviews and phone calls. Detective Ryan Miller from the Detroit Police Department's Juvenile Crimes Unit took Lily's statement in a room decorated with soothing colors and stuffed animals. A CPS caseworker named Michelle evaluated our home, asked Lily about her daily life, and noted with approval the stability of our household. Daniel called me Tuesday night, furious. The police came to my house, Sarah. They questioned Veronica for 2 hours. My wife is not a criminal, and you've turned this into a circus. Your wife hit my daughter hard enough to leave marks that lasted 4 days. That's assault. That's a crime. Lily provoked her. Leo told me everything. Your precious angel was taunting him, calling him stupid, waving her straight A's around like some kind of trophy. Veronica was just standing up for her son. The fact that Veronica and Leo had apparently coordinated a story didn't surprise me. What surprised me was Daniel's willingness to accept it without question. Lily never called Leo stupid. She has never once in her life mocked anyone for their grades. Ask her teachers. Ask anyone who knows her. I know what my son said. Your son watched his mother harm his cousin and said nothing. Do you really trust his account? The conversation devolved from there, with Daniel accusing me of jealousy over his successful marriage and stable family, while I tried to make him understand that the woman he married had shown her true self in our daughter's bruises. We haven't spoken since. The criminal case moved forward with agonizing slowness. Michigan prosecutors apparently weigh charges involving harm to children carefully, balancing evidence against likelihood of conviction. My photographs and Dr. Sanchez's documentation proved harm had occurred. Lily's testimony established Veronica as the perpetrator. The question was whether to pursue felony charges or accept a misdemeanor plea. Meanwhile, I retained a family attorney named Arthur Vance, recommended by a colleague at the clinic. Arthur specialized in custody disputes and domestic issues. His gray beard and gentle demeanor masked a razor-sharp legal mind. "What exactly do you want here, Sarah?" he asked during our first meeting. "Criminal penalties are one path. Civil remedies are another. Sometimes people want both, sometimes neither." I thought carefully before answering. Revenge wasn't my goal. Punishment for its own sake held no appeal. What I wanted was protection for Lily and accountability for Veronica. I want her to face real consequences. I want a record that follows her, and I want to make sure she never has unsupervised access to my daughter again. Arthur nodded slowly. All achievable. The criminal case will proceed regardless of our civil actions. What I can add is a restraining order and a lawsuit for assault and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Given the evidence, we would likely prevail. I authorized him to proceed. The restraining order came through within a week. Veronica was legally prohibited from coming within 500 feet of Lily, our home, her school, or any place she regularly frequented. Violating that order meant automatic arrest. Veronica's response was to hire her own attorney and countersue for defamation, claiming my statements to family members about the incident had damaged her reputation and caused emotional distress. Arthur laughed when he heard about the counterclaim. This is what we call a slap suit, a strategic lawsuit against public participation. It's designed to intimidate you into silence. The problem for Veronica is that truth is an absolute defense against defamation. We have medical records, police reports, and photographs. She won't win and she knows it. This is a delay tactic, nothing more. October bled into November. The criminal case culminated in a preliminary hearing where prosecutors presented their evidence. I sat in the gallery watching Veronica at the defense table. Her expression composed, her attorney whispering reassurances. When Dr. Sanchez's photos were displayed on the courtroom monitor, I saw several jurors wince. The judge found sufficient cause to proceed to trial. Veronica's attorney immediately began negotiating. A trial meant public exposure. Local news outlets had already picked up whispers of the case. The accused was a middle-class suburban mother with a previously clean record. The victim was a 12-year-old honor student. The optics were devastating. I received a call from Arthur on a Thursday afternoon in mid-November. They're offering a plea deal. Misdemeanor assault, probation, mandatory anger management and parenting classes, plus agreement to a civil settlement. No admission of guilt, but she pleads no contest. What about a record? She'll have a criminal conviction on her record. Future employers, volunteer organizations, anyone who runs a background check will see it. And the civil settlement, $25,000 for Lily. Money held in trust until she's 18. I discussed it with Lily that evening. She listened quietly, then asked a question that cut straight to the heart of everything. "Mom, what happens to Leo?" I hadn't expected that. My focus had been so fixed on justice for my daughter that I hadn't fully considered the collateral effects on her cousin. "What do you mean, honey?" "If Aunt Veronica gets in big trouble, Leo will be sad, and Uncle Daniel might divorce her, and then Leo won't have a family anymore." The maturity in her concern humbled me. Here was a child who had been violently harmed, worrying about the well-being of the boy who had stood by and watched. Leo has parents who love him, I said carefully. Whatever happens to their family, that won't change. And your uncle, he made choices I don't understand, but he's still Leo's dad. So, we should take the deal. I pulled her close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. I think we should, unless you want to go to trial. This is your decision as much as mine. Lily considered for a long moment. I don't want to talk about it in front of strangers again. The detective interview was really hard. I don't want to do more of that. We accepted the plea deal. The weeks leading up to the plea hearing were filled with a strange kind of limbo. Life continued in its ordinary rhythms, school and work and meals and sleep, while this extraordinary legal process churned beneath the surface. Lily returned to classes, armed with a note from Dr. Sanchez excusing her absences. Her teachers, informed in vague terms about a family emergency, extended deadlines and offered gentle kindness. I found myself hyper-focused on routine, packing lunches with meticulous care, ironing clothes that didn't need ironing, organizing closets and scrubbing grout and undertaking every small domestic project I had postponed for months. The therapist Lily had started seeing explained this was a common trauma response. Controlling what you can, when so much feels uncontrollable. My own coping mechanism involved late-night research sessions. I read everything I could find about cases involving harm to children, prosecution rates, sentencing guidelines. The statistics were grim. Most cases never resulted in charges. Those that did often ended in plea bargains to lesser offenses. Actual convictions with meaningful sentences were rare. But we had evidence, photographic, medical, testimonial. The forensic interview Lily endured had been professionally conducted, her account consistent and detailed. Detective Miller called me 2 days after to say the county attorney was confident in the case. Arthur kept me updated on the civil side. Veronica's attorney had initially attempted to argue that I had fabricated or exaggerated the injuries, a claim that collapsed the moment Dr. Sanchez's documentation entered the record. Their counterclaim for defamation lingered as a nuisance, requiring responses and filings that ate up billable hours, but Arthur assured me it was going nowhere. Thanksgiving arrived in this strange, suspended state. Mom canceled her planned trip to visit her sister in Texas, insisting on staying close. Family circles the wagons in crisis, she declared, showing up at my door with grocery bags full of turkey and fixings. That's what we do. We cooked together, the 3 generations of women, while Lily mashed potatoes and Mom basted the bird, and I assembled a green bean casserole from scratch. The kitchen filled with warmth and savory smells, a temporary refuge from everything waiting outside. At dinner, Mom raised her glass of wine. To us, she said simply, to getting through. Lily clinked her sparkling cider against our glasses, a small smile crossing her face. These moments of normalcy felt precious. Islands of peace in choppy waters. Daniel did not reach out for Thanksgiving. Neither did Veronica. The holiday passed without any word from their household, a silence that spoke volumes. The week after, I received a call from Detective Miller. The county attorney has made a decision. We're offering a plea to assault in the 5th degree, misdemeanor level, with the conditions your civil attorney mentioned. No contest plea, probation, mandatory counseling. Why not the felony charge? He sighed, the sound of someone delivering news he knew would disappoint. The severity of the injuries, while documented, falls in a gray area. Felony assault requires either substantial bodily harm or use of a dangerous weapon. A belt is arguably a dangerous weapon, but defense would contest that. The marks, while clearly visible, healed without medical intervention. It's a judgment call, and the county attorney doesn't want to risk an acquittal on the higher charge. The explanation made legal sense while feeling emotionally inadequate. Veronica had harmed my daughter with a belt buckle, and she might receive the equivalent of a traffic ticket. What's the alternative? We proceed to trial on the felony charge. Lily testifies in open court. Defense cross-examines her. Best case, conviction and maybe a year in county jail. Worst case, an acquittal and Veronica walks with nothing on her record. I discussed the options with Arthur, who offered his own perspective. A criminal conviction, even a misdemeanor, creates a permanent record. Background checks will flag it. Professional licenses may be affected. Combined with our civil settlement and the restraining order, you're building a wall of consequences around Veronica. Is it everything she deserves? Probably not. Is it more than most victims of harm as children ever get? Absolutely. Lily's input proved decisive. When I explained the choices, careful to present them neutrally, she listened with the grave attention of someone much older. If I testify at trial, and Veronica's lawyer will try to make me look like a liar. They might try. Yes. Arthur says the evidence is strong, but trials are unpredictable. And if we take the deal, she still gets in trouble, just less trouble? She'll have a criminal record. She'll be on probation. She'll have to take classes about not hurting people. And if she ever does anything like this again, the consequences will be much worse. Lily considered this. I don't want to make Leo watch his mom go to prison. He didn't do anything wrong. He was just scared like me. Her capacity for empathy, even toward the boy who had stood by during her harm, made my chest ache. David would have been so proud. We accepted the plea deal. Veronica entered her no-contest plea on a gray December morning. I sat in the gallery and watched her stand before the judge, answering his questions in a voice stripped of all its usual honey. Yes, she understood the charges. Yes, she understood the terms of probation. Yes, she agreed to comply with all conditions. Outside the courthouse, her attorney rushed her to a waiting car while she shielded her face from the one local news camera that had shown up. Daniel stood near the curb, looking lost. Our eyes met briefly. I saw pain there, confusion, maybe the first cracks in his certainty that his wife could do no wrong. I didn't approach him. There was nothing left to say. The civil case settled 2 weeks later. $25,000 for Lily, plus an additional $10,000 for my legal fees and documented expenses. Veronica's insurance wouldn't cover intentional acts, so the money came from their personal accounts. Daniel had to liquidate part of his retirement fund to cover it. I deposited Lily's settlement into a trust account managed by Arthur's office. By the time she turned 18, with modest growth, it would be enough for a year of college tuition. The money felt strange to receive. Blood money, some might call it, compensation for harm that no amount could truly address. Arthur framed it differently during our final meeting. This isn't about putting a price on what happened to Lily. It's about ensuring Veronica faces tangible financial consequences for her actions. Every payment she makes toward this settlement is a reminder of what she did. Every month Daniel sees that deduction from their accounts, he's forced to confront his wife's choices. I hadn't considered that angle. The settlement came in monthly installments over 2 years, not a lump sum. Veronica would be writing checks to my daughter for 24 months, a recurring obligation she couldn't ignore or forget. The restraining order remained in effect, renewed by the court every 6 months. Arthur explained that permanent orders were rare in cases without ongoing threat, but the judge seemed inclined to extend it as long as we requested. Given her violation of probation already, the court takes her compliance seriously. Any attempt to contact Lily directly or through intermediaries triggers immediate consequences. Life began rebuilding itself around these new legal boundaries. Lily's school assigned her to different lunch periods and passing times than Leo, minimizing potential contact. Our daily routines adjusted to avoid places Veronica might appear, though the restraining order technically required her to stay away from us. The holidays approached with complicated emotions. Thanksgiving had been a success, our small gathering filled with genuine gratitude for survival and support. But Christmas carried heavier weight. All those traditions and memories tangled with David's absence. And now the rupture in my relationship with Daniel. Mom navigated these waters with characteristic determination. "I've spoken with Daniel," she announced during a Sunday phone call. "He and Leo will celebrate Christmas Eve at his house. We'll do Christmas Day at yours. No overlap, no drama." I appreciated her intervention even as it stung. The fact that our family now required scheduling to avoid conflict felt like another casualty of Veronica's violence. How did Daniel sound? A long pause. Confused, defensive, guilty, I think, though he won't admit it. He keeps saying he didn't know what Veronica was capable of. That the woman he married wouldn't do something like this. The woman he married did do something like this. I know, honey. He's not ready to accept that yet. Christmas Day arrived with fresh snow. The Michigan landscape transformed into a postcard of white drifts and frosted windows. Mom appeared early with presents and contributions to dinner. We established new traditions to fill the spaces where old ones no longer fit, like watching Christmas movies Lily picked instead of the classics David and I had always insisted on. Opening presents, I noticed Lily had included a gift for me that clearly took significant thought. A leather journal tooled with a tree design and a set of archival quality pens. Dr. Olivia Chen said journaling helps process difficult experiences, Lily explained. I thought maybe you could try it, too. Since you went through hard stuff with me. The thoughtfulness of the gesture, a 12-year-old worrying about her mother's emotional processing, brought tears I quickly blinked away. Thank you, baby. This is perfect. Mom caught my eye across the living room, her own expression soft with unshed emotion. We were going to be okay. Damaged, changed, but okay. Christmas with our reduced family circle passed peacefully. I found myself writing in that journal late at night after Lily and Mom had gone to sleep. Pages filled with anger and grief and confusion. All the feelings I couldn't show my daughter because she needed stability more than she needed to witness my struggle. The words helped. Dr. Olivia Chen, the therapist I had started seeing in November, encouraged the practice. You've been in crisis mode for months, she observed during our sessions. Fight or flight, constant vigilance, protecting your daughter. That's necessary in the moment, but it's not sustainable. You need outlets that aren't directly connected to Lily's recovery. I took up running again, something I had abandoned after David's death. Early mornings before Lily woke, miles through quiet neighborhood streets, lungs burning in the cold air. Physical exhaustion that emptied my mind of everything but the next step, the next breath. January brought unexpected developments. My mother had returned from her cruise tanned and relaxed. But that ease evaporated when she learned what had happened in her absence. Why didn't anyone tell me? She demanded, sitting in my living room with a cup of tea gone cold in her hands. I would have come home immediately. Because there was nothing you could have done except worry. The legal process took its own course. Lily and I handled it. Mom looked at her granddaughter playing with a new art set on the floor. Lily seemed okay, mostly. We had started seeing a therapist specializing in childhood trauma, and the sessions were helping. Nightmares had mostly stopped. She no longer flinched when unexpected sounds came from other rooms. Daniel called me, Mom admitted. He wanted me to intervene, to convince you to drop everything and make peace. What did you tell him? Her jaw tightened. I told him that if he couldn't protect his niece from his own wife, he had no business asking for family reconciliation. I had never loved my mother more than in that moment. January also brought more news. Arthur called with an update. Veronica had violated her probation by failing to attend a required anger management session. A warrant had been issued. She turned herself in that afternoon and spent 48 hours in county jail before posting bail. The violation triggered a review of her probation terms. The judge added community service hours and extended her supervision period by 6 months. Another incident would mean actual jail time. Daniel finally reached out in late January, not by phone, but by letter. Handwritten, 6 pages, delivered to my mailbox with no return address. He apologized for not believing me. He described the past months as a slow awakening. Watching Veronica's mask slip further each day, he detailed incidents he had previously dismissed or explained away. Outbursts of rage over minor provocations, cruel comments to Leo about his academic failures, an escalating pattern that the harm to Lily had brought into sharp focus. He was considering divorce. The letter arrived without warning, a handwritten confession that Daniel must have agonized over for weeks. His penmanship, always neater than mine, built page after page with revelations he had apparently never shared with anyone. Veronica's temper had shown itself early in their marriage, he wrote. Small explosions over minor frustrations, quickly followed by apologies and promises to do better. He had rationalized it as passion, intensity, the flip side of the charm that had attracted him in the first place. After Leo's birth, the explosions became less frequent, but more severe. She had thrown a plate at Daniel during an argument about finances. She had screamed at Leo, then just a toddler, for crying during a car ride. Each incident came with explanations that seemed reasonable in isolation: stress, hormones, sleep deprivation. Daniel described his own role in enabling the pattern. He worked longer hours to avoid being home during her dark moods. He made excuses to family members who witnessed her sharp tongue. He told himself that all marriages had rough patches, that commitment meant weathering storms. The harm to Lily had shattered that framework. I kept telling myself you were exaggerating, he wrote. That Lily must have done something to provoke it. That my wife, the mother of my child, couldn't possibly be the monster you were describing. But then I saw the court documents, the photographs, and I recognized the pattern of those marks. Recognized? The word chilled me. He continued, explaining that Veronica had used a belt on Leo twice before. Minor incidents, he claimed, that hadn't left lasting marks. She had promised it would never happen again. He had believed her. I failed, the letter concluded. I failed Leo. I failed you. I don't know if there's any coming back from that, but I wanted you to know that I finally see the truth. I read the letter twice, then set it aside without responding. His awakening had come too late for my daughter. Whatever journey Daniel needed to take toward understanding his wife's true nature, it was not my responsibility to guide him. February, March, spring arrived slowly in Michigan, grudging warmth replacing bitter cold by inches. Lily's grades remained excellent. Her therapy sessions decreased from weekly to bi-weekly. She joined the school's debate team and discovered a talent for persuasive argument that made me simultaneously proud and slightly terrified. I ran into Leo at the grocery store one Saturday morning. He was alone, pushing a cart with mechanical efficiency, selecting items from a crumpled list. When he saw me, he froze. "Hi, Aunt Sarah." The title felt wrong now, tainted by everything that had happened. But he was still a 14-year-old boy who hadn't asked for any of this. "Hey, Leo. How are you doing?" He shrugged, the universal adolescent response to unwelcome inquiries. His eyes held a weary exhaustion I recognized from my own reflection during the worst months of grief after David's death. "Mom moved out," he said abruptly. "She's living with her sister in Indiana. Dad says they're figuring things out, but I think that means divorce." I didn't know what to say. My anger toward Veronica remained, but seeing its fallout on her son complicated the satisfaction I might have felt. "That must be hard." "Yeah." He stared at the floor. "I never got to say sorry to Lily. I mean, for just standing there. When it happened. I think about it all the time." The weight of guilt he carried was evident in his slumped shoulders, the way he couldn't meet my eyes. He had texted me once months ago asking if Lily was okay, but he had never been able to apologize directly, separated by legal orders and family fractures. "You were scared," I said. "Your mom was doing something awful and you were scared." "That's understandable. Lily probably hates me." "She doesn't. She asked about you." Actually worried about how you were doing. His head came up, surprise evident. Really? Really? Maybe someday you two can talk when everyone's ready. He nodded, then resumed his shopping with the determined focus of someone keeping emotion at arm's length. I watched him go, wondering what lasting damage Veronica's choices had inflicted on her own child. The final chapter came in May, almost exactly a year after my cruise-bound mom set everything in motion. Daniel's divorce was finalized. He received primary custody of Leo, with Veronica granted supervised visitation every other weekend. The judge cited her criminal record and probation violations as factors in the decision. Arthur forwarded me a copy of the custody order, highlighting one particular passage. Given the documented history of physical mistreatment toward a minor child in the respondent's care, this court finds that unsupervised contact with any minor, including her biological child, poses unacceptable risk at this time. Veronica had lost not just her marriage, but meaningful access to her own son. I wish I could say I felt triumphant, vindicated, satisfied that justice had been served. The truth was more complicated. A family had been destroyed. A child was growing up between two hostile households. A woman who had once been my friend, or something close to it, had revealed depths of cruelty that would define her for years to come. But Lily was safe. That remained the only metric that truly mattered. We celebrated the end of her 7th grade year with a trip to Boston, a weekend of museums and deep dish pizza and boat tours along the river. She laughed easily now, the shadow that had dimmed her spirits slowly lifting. On our last night, sitting on the hotel balcony watching city lights flicker, she asked me a question. "Mom, do you think Aunt Veronica is a bad person?" I considered carefully before answering. I think she made terrible choices, unforgivable ones. Whether that makes her a bad person or just a damaged one, I honestly don't know. I hope Leo turns out okay. Me too, baby. Me too. We flew home the next morning. Summer stretched ahead, full of possibilities. Lily had already made plans with school friends, beach trips and movie marathons, all the normal activities of a 12-year-old on vacation. Looking at her across the breakfast table, I marveled at her resilience. She had survived something no child should experience and emerged with her kindness intact. That was David's gift to her, I thought. That fundamental decency that adversity couldn't extinguish. The belt marks had long since faded. The psychological wounds would take longer. But we had each other, a future to build, and the knowledge that when someone tried to break my daughter, we had fought back and won. Sometimes that's the only revenge that matters. Not destroying the person who hurt you, but refusing to let them destroy you instead. Lily understood that better than I did. She had worried about Leo even in the midst of her own pain. She had chosen compassion where she had every right to choose anger. My daughter taught me more about strength in those months than I ever managed to teach her. And Veronica, wherever she was now, living with her sister in supervised visitation and a criminal record that would follow her forever, had lost the chance to see that kind of character grow. She had raised Leo to measure himself against others, to see success as a competition to be won at any cost. Look where that had gotten all of them. I made myself a promise that spring evening. Lily would never doubt her worth. She would never apologize for excellence or shrink to make others comfortable. She would grow into whoever she was meant to become, and I would be there cheering the whole way. That's not revenge exactly, but it sure feels like victory. What would you have done to protect your child?